Hello, it's Walter again. So basically, I'm going to now show you how to embed an actual form into your actual social site. So this is basically step two. Step one was basically creating your actual page layout. All right, so we're going to basically now take that page layout and we're going to embed it into an actual website page. So it can be basically a page on anybody's website anywhere, and the information added to that into that form will automatically be generated into your Perfect Mind database. Now, the way the forms work are basically you can place a form on any web page. Once anybody fills out that form, that information gets stored in Perfect Mind. So that contact basically becomes a lead in your database. But now, sure, that's awesome. It becomes a lead. You can basically, create a view for yourself for leads, and then you can basically have a look at the list of all your leads that have come in. That's awesome, but you want to be able to categorize this. So let's say we want to know how many people basically filled out the form, for instance, on the About Us page. How about on the Contact Us page? How many people basically filled out the form that is there if we added one? So basically we could also have forms on each of our program pages. So, our little tigers, our children's programs, our BJJ programs. So if we could add a form into each of those pages and have the public fill out the form for you to know what form they filled on what page, that's a great advantage. So when you call them now, hey, I saw the information. You're obviously interested in our BJJ program, rather than having to ask them, so what are you interested in? You already have kind of a foot up on them by knowing what they've filled out or what their interests are. So the way to do this is basically easy. It's basically adding your form to an actual campaign. So attaching that to a campaign. So let's go ahead and get logged in. So to get this all started, basically the first thing we would need to do, of course, is create our page layout, which we have done in the previous exercise. So we've got our page layout, awesome. The second step is now to basically create a campaign. So let's go ahead and get logged in. We're going to go to the Office App Suite. And from here, we are going to go into our campaign section. So in the campaigns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new campaign. And I'm going to call this campaign, I'm going to call it, let's say I'm going to put a form under the special. So we've got an image on our homepage that has 2 free classes. Click here. So I'm going to basically make this campaign link to it so I know how many people are actually filling out that 2 free classes. So 2 free classes. The other good reason why it's really important to have a campaign attached to that form is because by knowing what campaign they filled out, you can have Perfect Mind now set up when a new lead is generated with the 2 free classes campaign attached to it. An automated email could go out basically offering them the 2 free classes, or emailing them a coupon that they can print off and bring to the school for their 2 free classes. So it's really important to attach your forms to a campaign, because then you could have basically automated emails created in Perfect Mind to automatically go out to people as soon as they fill out the form. For instance, you could have a great one, which is basically the good thing about getting people's information is giving them something. So a newsletter is a great way to do that too, to get people's information. So have them, fill out the form to instantly receive our newsletter. Boom, they fill out their form, name, phone number, email, and the system can automatically be set up. So as soon as they fill that out, and a newsletter is automatically triggered to them. All right, so that's great to be able to do that. So that's what the campaigns are all about. So I've got my 2 free classes. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to check the active box just to know that it's an active campaign, and then the type, of course, is going to be online. All right, so basically from here, so if you do have a cost, you can always put your cost and the annual cost. That way, if you are running some kind of actual promotion, like you're paying for a newspaper ad and you want to see how many leads are being generated from that, that way you can basically gauge if it's going to be something that's worthwhile or not, so you know how much it's costing you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save my 2 free classes campaign. Now what I'm doing is I'm going back into the settings, and I'm going back into forms now. Now, in forms, I'm going to create a brand new form. So now normally what I like to do is I like to keep the campaign, I like to keep the form name, everything the same. So for instance, this is what I was talking about, get started today, 2 free classes, click here. So if I click here, it takes me to a page. Actually, it doesn't take me to a page yet, but I'm going to do it where it takes us to an actual page on our website so we can actually fill the form out. So first and foremost, actually, I'm going to go ahead and create that page. So actually I already know what that page is. It's going to be the get started page. Yeah, I'm going to do it right here. So I'm going to basically grab this link and I'm going to basically re-link that piece of the image with this page, because this is where I want it to go now. So if you remember the exercise of creating hotspots within your images, I'm going to basically do a brush up on that one right now. So I'm going to go into the edit mode on my home page. Now I basically want to change my hyperlink, that is basically the click here part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the image. I am then going to basically go into the excuse me, I'm going to go into our image editor. I'm going to click on it. And now as you can see, basically it has the rectangular around click here. And as you can see, this is the URL that it was going to, championsway.com. But I don't want that URL. I want my new URL. So it takes us to this page now. So I'm going to basically go ahead and update area and then click OK. I'm now going to save this. And I mean, it's that easy to do this stuff. It really is easy. So from here, if I go back to here and I click on the click here, this should now take me into the get started page. Awesome. All right. So we're ready to roll. I've got my page set up. I've got everything done. So I'm going to go back into settings once again. And I'm going to go ahead and go to forms. And now I am ready to create my form. So like I said, I always like to basically keep everything tied together. So my campaign name was 2 free classes. I'm going to call this also 2 free classes. That way makes it a lot easier later if you're wanting to change something on the form, whatever it may be. Everything is labeled accordingly so you can find it with no big hassles whatsoever. Because sometimes if you don't name things properly, generically, you'll put like, oh, form, you won't have no idea what form that is, especially if you got multiple forms on your websites. Okay, so I've got my name. That's for just internal use, of course, for our basically categorizing. The member profile. So we don't want a profile to be created when somebody fills out the form, so leave it to no profile. The object, of course, as we talked in the previous exercise, is contact. You can choose basically any object you want in the system, but of course this one is contact because that's where our lead type is residing. Page layout. This is now where we want our my simple form layout, the 4 fields we created. Now, the campaign, this is the one we want to now link to 2 free classes. So as you can see, the name and the campaign are identical. All right, so we want to keep those nice and close together. Now, the title, I'm going to go ahead and show you this, but I normally don't like to use it just because the font isn't pronounced enough. It's basically small font, and it doesn't really highlight or do it justice. So I'm going to go ahead and just show it to you. So I'm going to put in here 2 free classes. All right. All right, and then the submit button, of course, you can change that to be, get started today. So whatever you put on this button is going to show up in the button on the actual form itself. All right, so I've got my title. So basically the title shows up on the form, and the submit button shows up on the actual form itself. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Alright, so now I've got my form all set up and everything is basically ready. So now, if you were going to basically add this form on a third-party website somewhere, this is where you would go through and grab the coding that you would need. And of course, based on the color theme of that website, you might have to create something that would show up nicely on there. But since we're embedding this on our social site, basically all we got to do is create the form, which we just did. Now what we're doing is we're going right into the website page that we want to link this onto. So if I go back into here, oh yeah, our page is basically under the App Suite hidden pages, and it's a get started page. So I want to put my form right under the 2 free classes heading here, and you'll see in a second why I put that there. So I'm going to go ahead and click edit, and now I'm going to go ahead and scroll to the area in question. So now I'm going to want my form placed right under the 2 free classes heading here. So like I said, I don't like the title that the form actually generates, so I like to create my own usually, but I'll show it to you in a second anyways. Alright, so I got my cursor where I want my form to appear. So in the actual editor, there's an actual embed form icon here, insert form. So if I click on this, it's going to now allow me to go in and choose the form. So which is my form name? So it's got all the forms that are created in the database. I want 2 free classes. That's the one I'm going to be using. All right, now there's 2 different layouts. There's a simple layout, as you can see in the preview window down below here. It's got basically 2 different layouts. This is the regular layout, so the field names are to the side and the field is to the right. The simplified layout, you'll see that the field names are within the actual field itself. It's the simplified layout is really good if you want to put it like in smaller areas. So if it's like, you know, a sidebar somewhere that's only 200 pixels wide, the simplified version is perfect. Now, as you can see, the 2 free classes, this is basically the way the form generates it. It's small and it's not pronounced enough for my liking, so I usually type it in myself. And in a second, I'll show you basically how we get rid of that. So for now, basically, because I'm putting this on the actual page itself, I'm going to basically just go with a regular form, so it's not going to be simplified. And on this, the unsimplified one, the actual text at the top is a lot better. It's much more pronounced. But we're mostly running with the... So this is the 2 free classes, all right? So as I said, in the simplified forms, the text at the top, the title doesn't show up as nice. As you can see, it's really small and ugly. But in the regular layout, it's fairly big and it looks pretty good. But the form takes up more room. The field names are off to the side. So the simplified form by far is much nicer to embed, and that's normally the one that I embed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and before we embed this, you can now basically define the area for this to go into. And by that I mean, if I wanted to basically move my form over to the left, and I want to do that because I don't want it justified left, because I want to kind of center it under the 2 free classes in orange that I have there. So I'm going to basically move this over to the left about let's say about 40 pixels. Let's see what that does. As you can see, it's moved it over, but I want it more, so I'm going to go basically double that. I'm going to go to 90, and if I click in the preview area, you're going to see now that it's moved over again a bit more. So I'm going to go, okay, that's good enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert this guy. Now, as you can see down below here, the form has been inserted. All right, now of course you're going to want to play with the theme to make it look nice. So this should probably have a, you know, a transparent background rather than the white ugly background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go ahead and save this out. So I'm going to save it. Now we've got the simplified form. So we got the 2 free classes in the form there, but we don't need it because I got my own up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into settings, and I'm going to go into forms. Now I'm going to go into the 2 free classes form, and I'm going to remove my title from here because I don't need it. I added my own. Basically, I just typed it in there. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So now if we go back to our hidden pages and we go to our get started page, if I scroll down, you'll see that the actual title is now gone, and it's got the 2 free classes over top, which I just typed it in. So that looks pretty good. The only thing now is the white background, though, doesn't look nice at all. And once I basically remove that background, the black or the gray lettering is going to be very hard to read over the actual purple. So what we're going to do is, when we basically added this form in here, if you remembered, the theme I used was Walter. All right, so if you know what theme you're using, so make sure whenever you embed anything and you're choosing a theme, remember what theme it is that you embedded. And just be aware that that theme might be used elsewhere, so you don't want to go and start moving it around and changing it, because it might be fine on another page but not fine on your previous page. So just be aware of that. You might have to create a whole new theme just because of where it's being embedded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Walter theme, and what I'm going to do is now, for forms, there's really only 4 fields that you got to worry about. Main color is one. Text displayed over main color is the second one. So basically this is where the button goes. So for instance, if we go back into the button, you'll see that the button itself is black, but the text within it is white. Okay, so that's the main color, is basically the black, and the black around the actual fields itself. All right, so that's what we're talking about, main color. So let's go back into settings and go back into forms and to free classes. So, oh, excuse me, we're on themes, not forms. So, and we are on the Walter theme. So here you'll see the main color is, you need this text displayed over main color. So this is the text that will show up in the button. All right, so these two you need. The next one you're going to need is main content background color. So this is where the content sits. Basically, what color do you want this to be? For this one, basically, I want it to be transparent. So I want it to pick up the characteristic of the page it sits on. So I'm going to click OK to that. Now the main content text color. So now, as we said, basically, because the page is purple, gray is not going to show up so nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it white so it can show up better. All right, so there's basically main color, text displayed over main color, main content text color, and main content background color. So the first 4 theme colors are needed for when you're embedding forms. Remember that, the first 4. And then there's 2 more only that you got to worry about. The page background color. So this one I'm going to make transparent as well. And once again, the page text color. So instead of black, as we talked about, or gray, let's do it white and click OK. So now that I've changed that theme, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now when we go to our Get Started page, you're going to notice that our form is going to be a lot better. So you can see that we removed the white ugly background and we changed our lettering from black or gray to white. So you can actually see the field names nice and clearly. The only bad thing now is we got the scroll bar here. Now, I mean, yeah, scroll bars are fine, but for this particular instance, it's not needed. It looks horrible, to say the least. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Edit, and we're going to dump that scroll bar. So to do this, we have to go into HTML now. So we're going to be the master web designers now, because we're going into HTML. But hey, no worries, very basic stuff here. So click on HTML. Now, in HTML, you basically want to be looking for that iframe that I keep talking about. So basically everything is iframe, the embedded form, the schedule, all that. But basically the only iframe on this page is basically the iframe that holds that particular web to lead form. So whenever you're looking at that, just be careful. And of course the iframe here, you can see that it's for a YouTube, and that's that little YouTube we got there. So this is right here is the code for the YouTube that we got running on that page. So if you remember that little video on the page, this is the code. So basically we're on the right track, because basically our form is below the YouTube video. So if we look below that, you can see right underneath it, it's like, hey, here's another iframe. Starting from here, there's the iframe width 500, the height 300, yes, and then hidden object sign up. Hey, it's the sign up sheet. There we go. So this is definitely the right form. And basically this is the code for that iframe we just embedded, correct? So this is the iframe code that embedded into the page when we embedded the actual form. So if you're looking at this, you'll see that iframe, then the width, then the height, then the border tells us it's 0. Then it's got the link of where this is coming from, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite a huge, basically, name of where it's coming from. So if you look at all that now, if we are looking at this, there is going to be a, all right, let's see where this guy is here. So now we are looking for the scrolling. It should have auto beside it. So we've got the width, the height, frame, sign up, true, blah, blah, blah. Top pad, 90 pad, no, ID, frame, style, border, iframe. Alright, so here I don't see scrolling, so you know what? I'm going to go ahead and add that in myself. But normally you should see something that says scrolling. So I'm going to go in and say scrolling. And I'm going to do an equal sign, and then I'm going to put in parentheses no. And then I'm going to close those parentheses. And now I'm going to go into our design view. And let's see if and you can see that our scroller has disappeared. We've got no more scroll bar. So normally when you embed a form, the code already has scrolling equals auto, A-U-T-O, meaning automatic. But if it doesn't, you can always basically go into the iframe code and basically in between width and height, basically just after the quotation mark in between, just basically make a space and then add scrolling equals in quotations no, and that's all you have to do, and it will disappear that scroll bar. So for recapping, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this guy out. So now we've got our form. So now here's our form. So now what I'm going to do is I want to test it. So let's go ahead and get this filled out. So I'm going to go test, then test, email, test at test.com, and then my primary number, let's say it's going to be 899-678-5454, and I'm going to go ahead and get started today, and it says thank you, your information has been saved. So now if we go into our office and we're going to go into campaigns, and now of course we're looking for the 2 free classes campaign. If I go into that, right away you can see contacts 1. You know that it worked because we now have our information from that form we just filled out. So you can see here that the lead has been entered. First name is Test, last name Test, that's us of course. Then of course farther down, the date, here it is, of the date of being signed in, and here we have our phone number and our email account. So now you can go ahead and phone them. But one thing I did notice when we did this was, if we go back into hidden pages and we go to the get started page, you'll notice that last name and email are mandatory, but first name and phone is not. Now first name, not really too worried, but the phone number, that should definitely be a required field. So when we were creating our form on the last exercise, or I should say our page layout, on that particular exercise we should have basically made the field primary number to be required. So what we're going to do is we've got to log back into Smart Client, but I still got it open, so I'm going to go into my Smart Client login. Now we have to basically go back into Setup, Development, and Objects. Alright, so we're going back to the page layout that we had just created. So I'm going back into Contact, of course, going to Page Layout. My Simple Form is the page that we created, so I'm going to go into it. Now, here's the primary phone. So basically, if I click on that field, you're going to see now that it has 3 checkboxes. Required, read only, show in summary. I want this to be required, so I'm going to go ahead and check that, and I'm going to save this. Alright, so now if we go back into our browser version and we go now and we refresh our page, you're going to notice now that the primary phone is required because it's got the little asterisk beside it. Pretty cool, eh? That's it. Now they have to fill out the phone number before they can send this off, meaning that you're going to have their email and their phone number. And of course, phoning is the best. You can basically capture and close a lot more leads by phoning them rather than emailing them and waiting for them to read it or respond to you. Get on the phone and call them. Now, the next step here is, you're probably wondering, is like, okay, that's great and all, but so what? I gotta basically, every day I gotta log into the office now, go into campaigns and start looking at the different campaigns I have running and see who's actually filled that in. It would be a lot easier if I would just get an email. Hey, sure enough, that can definitely be done. What that is, it's called a workflow. And what I'm going to do, the next exercise is going to be the workflow exercise. So make sure you come and view it with me. We'll see you in a few.